Hey, everybody. Welcome to Drop Dead Serious. I'm Ashleigh Banfield. I got a special podcast for you tonight because as I record this, it is the eve of the sentencing of Bryan Kohberger. And if you can believe it, my podcast producer, Lindsay Haller, is in Idaho right now, standing in front of the courthouse, where tomorrow morning the sentencing is set to get underway at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and at 8:23 p.m. tonight Mountain Time, 10:23 Eastern Time. This is what it looked like outside the courthouse. It's amazing. People have already started arriving at the courthouse and lining up to make sure that they can be in the courtroom for that sentencing first thing in the morning. It's going to be a long night. Obviously, they've got deck chairs. Presumably, they've got something to drink and eat with them, something warm for overnight, but they have staked their place in line. This is not unlike other cases that I have covered before. Jodi Arias, Casey Anthony. I mean, people will... Karen Reed. I mean, people want to be a part of history. They want to witness this process for themselves. They might even just want to get a look at that guy before you probably will not be able to get a look at him again. After the sentencing, he will be whisked away into the obscurity of atrophying. That's what I call it. Basically, he'll wither away until he dies behind bars. But I just found that so fascinating. If you're looking at the video and you see off to the left, there's two big white tents. First one is Court TV. The other one is NewsNation, my network that I do a program 10 p.m. Eastern called NewsNation's Banfield. It's easy to remember. It's my last name. The show is Banfield. I'm going to be doing special coverage all day during the sentencing on NewsNation and also on my show as well. But I wanted to bring you a few things as you're watching this. The sentencing is underway, and so we'll have full coverage of it, of course. But I wanted to bring you a few things that we covered on my NewsNation show tonight, and things that we've been seeing leading up to this momentous day, the sentencing. First and foremost, my colleague Brian Enton spent the day today touring the maximum security facility where Bryan Kohberger is likely to begin his sentence. Who knows? Maybe that's where he'll be forever, and that's where he'll end his sentence. It is possible, though, that he will be transferred to another state because there are these agreements between states when sometimes it's difficult or expensive, or there are special, specifications on an inmate. They have deals with other states who can house their inmates for them, and basically they contract it out. If you are listening on the podcast, I highly recommend you go to Drop Dead Serious on YouTube, because what Brian was able to do is take cameras inside the facility. And it's called the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. And what I saw inside there in Brian's footage was just so eye-opening. Don't feel for a minute that Bryan Kohberger is not going to be suffering in this facility. There are cages inside the prison. And if Bryan Kohberger wants to have any chitty-chat time with other inmates, he can do so in a cage inside what is like a general population for the protective custody inmates, right? And then there's this other setup that Brian's going to show you. They look like, desks that you sat in when you were a kid. There's single desks that have an arm rest, but the desk is part of the armrest. And if Bryan Kohberger wants to sit amongst the others and chat in another respect, he has to be handcuffed to that desk. I'd never seen it, I'd never seen anything like it before, but holy shit, it is restrictive, man. I mean, there is no freedom of movement in there, not even among your other awful inmates, the other dangerous PCs, the protective custody inmates. No, he'll either be in a cage where he can watch some entertainment on an iPad, or he could be locked to one of those desks, which is like almost socially distanced away from the other inmates. Anyway, here's a look at the conversation I had with Brian Enton on my Banfield show on NewsNation tonight, and his incredible work going into this maximum security institution where Kohberger is destined. Lucky for you, Brian, you can go in and you can go out, and you are one of the rare ones along with the staff that gets that privilege. The rest of them go in and they don't get out for some period of time or forever. I want to ask you about your visit and what you saw in there in just a moment. But before I do, I want to ask you about tomorrow and the protocol of the hearing. This is the sentencing hearing. I expect we're going to hear victims' impact statements from these families. What have you heard?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, Ashleigh, though, about being able to come out. I went in with Mo, our photographer, who you know, and that's the first thing I said to him. I'm like, ooh, my God, I'm glad that we get to walk out of this place. I would never want to have to stay in here. We'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of the sentencing, tomorrow it's going to start 9 a.m. local time here. Expected to take the full day. Could go into Thursday, we're told. If they need more time, they're ready to go on Thursday, too. I'm told that the victim impact statements will happen first, so the family members will be able to get up, they'll be sworn in, and then they will be able to finally address the court about everything that they've been through. There's multiple family members for each victim. We know Ethan Chapin's family, of course, won't be here. They decided not to be there tomorrow. And then after that, I'm told, is when Kohberger would have the opportunity to speak. And the judge could ask him if he wants to speak. The judge could say that he wants him to speak. Ultimately, he doesn't have to, but we'll all be watching closely. I don't personally think he's going to, based on everything that we've seen, but you never know. I mean, tomorrow could be the day.
Well, I know one thing, and that is that Kaylee Gonzalez's dad, Steve, said that he will be there, and he does plan to speak, as does his wife and their daughter, Olivia. Whether that plan has changed since last week, since he mentioned it, I don't know. But, you know, it's funny that you say we don't know whether Bryan Kohberger is going to speak. By all accounts, our work, yours and mine, and everybody watching, and everybody who's investigated and been invested in this story for the sake of the 4 victims, by all accounts, Bryan, he just seems like he is filled to the brim with ego. He just seems like he thinks he's better than all of us. And I would be shocked if he didn't want to do that last parting, statement before he literally disappears into atrophy land. And we saw, BTK, the BTK killer, do that and talked and floored us all. How many people think that he just might decide to enthrall us all with what he thinks was his best work of his life?
Yeah, look, it's a good point that you say. I mean, they could never allow him to do an interview. He could just be in this prison in the middle of the desert. I mean, we're 30 minutes outside Boise to the south, just in the middle of the nowhere. He could just rot here for the rest of his life and never get to say a word. So maybe he will take the opportunity tomorrow. It's possible. He's just been so quiet all along, and he clearly understands the process so well. I mean, he's getting his PhD in criminology, but the yes and no answers and just the total numbness about him. It's hard to imagine him suddenly getting emotional and deciding to speak. But it's certainly possible. I know that some of the victims' family members want to address him directly during their victim impact statement and have been told that that's not necessarily allowed, that they should address the judge. But at this point, they may just do what they want to do. I mean, if they look at him while they give their statement, what are they really going to do about it?
Well, I've been through a lot of these, and judges give a lot of latitude to these victims' family members because this is it. This is their only chance for true justice. They're not getting a trial. They're not getting satisfaction of at least knowing what happened to their kids. And so usually judges will go farther than you would imagine. They'll have to haul it back, though, when things start to get heated, tense, and potentially break into violence. And that we've seen that happen, too. And I always understand why. I understand why victims' family members just lose it and go after, the convicts. But so let me ask you a little bit about the place behind you, because you were very lucky to get a chance to take a look inside. Very few people ever get a chance to see inside a jail, let alone a max prison. So walk me through it. Tell me what you saw, what you learned.
Yeah, it was something. I mean, like I said, it's beyond the guard gate right there. You have to go way back. I mean, surrounded by multiple levels of barbed wire. You get buzzed in through multiple gates. They won't open one gate until you get to the next. Then they do a search, the metal detectors. Obviously, you can't bring your phones inside. We got the tour. We got the full tour. We were there for almost 2.5 hours, Ashleigh. We walked around the whole place. It's sterile. But there were some things surprised me how awful it was. Some things surprised me, though, though, I was surprised some things that the prisoners do get to do that I wasn't expecting. Take a look. So this is the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. You can see the double barbed wire. This is where the most dangerous and violent people in Idaho are housed. We're going to go inside for this tour. Very, very rare look at what it's like on the inside. This is the area of the prison where Bryan Kohberger could end up. Long-term restricted housing and what's known as closed custody, protective custody, where prisoners who could be hurt by the population go, or prisoners who could hurt others have to stay. The prisoners here are inside these cells 23 hours a day. All food and water is sent into the cells through these little doors. They can sit at these tables, but are secured to the tables with shackles, or put into these cages where they can use tablets for visitation. While we were watching, we saw inmates doing something called fishing, when they use strings from blankets or a t-shirt to send notes under the door. That's why these bean bags are placed at the foot of the door to stop them from doing it. Almost every inmate can buy a tablet to have in their cell for $100. It has music, email, and movies. And they can also buy a TV to keep in their cell, which has basic cable. This is the outdoor area where the prisoners can go 1 hour a day. Some have to stay in these cages because they are so dangerous. For prisoners who are in protective custody, they may also get time here in the library or the computer lab. Sexual offenders and murderers of young women and children can be shunned by the population here, which could be an issue for a high-profile inmate like Bryan Kohberger. Though we're told after the newness wears off, most inmates begin to fit in. So, Ashleigh, they will do an evaluation of Kohberger after the sentencing, the Idaho prison system will, and then they will determine exactly where he'll go, although it appears this is really the only place. This is the only max prison. This is where the worst of the worst goes. And I was surprised, maybe I just didn't know this, I was surprised that every prisoner can buy a tablet for $100, that they can have all the time in their cell to email, listen to music, watch movies, and they can buy a TV here, and they get the TV in their cell all the time with basic cable. I just always assumed they had to go out and they got like 30 minutes of TV time, but that's not the case here.
Yeah, every place is a little different, and I think a lot of people are upset about the fact that prisoners are given all that, you know, lounge time in their cells with entertainment. I've also heard another story which is crazy, Bryan, and that is that they're watching true crime. These are criminals who have committed true crime being entertained by shows about true crime, which is just sort of an irony that blows your mind. Talk to me about the death row inmates, though, because he was likely going to be one of them. Is he going to be housed near them? Will he be able to talk to them? Will he ever see them and think, well, I could have been you, but I'm here?
No, so they're kept totally separate. They're in the same prison. I think there's 8 of them who are here. I think that's the number they gave us. They're actually kept together, like in a pod together. So Bryan Kohberger will not be associated with them. Really, I don't think he's going to be associated with much of anyone, at least to begin with. Eventually, it sounds like he could sort of move up to where he would get some socialization with other prisoners who they deem don't want to hurt him. But that seems to be a big concern, that he's going to have a target on his back based on his notoriety and based on the awful, heinous crimes that he committed. We spoke with a local bondsman who knows the prison system very well. He's been to a lot of these places. This is what he said about that, Ashleigh. What will Bryan Kohberger's life be like there?
His life is going to be a little more harsh than what it was in the Ada County Jail. When he was there, we couldn't legally say he was guilty yet. Now he is guilty. He doesn't have all that, you know, kind of back and forth stuff. He is a guilty murderer, and he's going to have to be segregated. As you may know, people in prison don't like people that hurt women or children. And he's hurt women. And that's not something that the inmates there take lightly to. It's something that is definitely going to put a target on his back.
And the people in that same prison are the most dangerous?
They're the most dangerous in Idaho. That's where it is. The facility he's in is a men-only facility, and it's the most dangerous prisoners in Idaho.
And it was interesting, you know, the vibe that I got is that the prisoners do shun certain people, sex offenders, people who kill children based on their crimes, but that over time, sometimes even some of those folks get accepted here by the general population. So we'll just have to wait and see, you know, sort of how Bryan Kohberger fits in here.
Well, and I've got a segment coming up on this show, Brian, about prisoner justice, where big, high-profile, dangerous, psychotic killers have met their prisoner justice fate in the past, meaning they did not get to live out their natural lives of their sentences. They were murdered by other inmates in horrible, gruesome ways. And I'm going to line up a whole bunch of those guys, famous names that our viewers will know. Before I do that, though, can you tell me if the bail bondsman was savvy about what the prison does to keep him, from getting shanked, keep him from that prisoner justice? How do they keep him alive from those who, put the target on him?
Yeah, that's a big deal. The bondsman talked about it, but I also learned a lot about it inside the prison. The concern that he won't hurt anybody else violently is there, obviously, although we haven't heard any stories about him doing anything bad in any of the jails he's been in. But perhaps the biggest concern is someone hurting him, again, based on his notoriety. And they will go to great lengths to protect him or any other prisoner in that situation from being hurt. Listen to his explanation of that.
He will be in confinement. It's not going to be a disciplinary segregation. It's going to be more of an administrative segregation because of the target on his back for murdering women. And he will be out an hour a day. And the former Attorney General of Idaho said he'll probably be in solitary his whole life, and I agree because of that.
So no interaction with other prisoners?
No. The maximum security facility in Idaho does have a step-down program to where they can reintroduce people to other inmates, and they kind of put them in cages in the same room to where they can talk but not have contact. But I don't think he will ever get that chance. It's something he would probably be smart not wanting, because there is that target, and people in prison don't forget. He will always have that target.
And those cages, Ashleigh, he spoke about, you saw it in my video earlier, they are so weird to see because there's the cells and then there's the big open areas, and they're almost like these phone booths in the open area, and they do look like cages. I don't know how else to describe it. And they put them in that cage, and then there's someone else in one far away, and then that's how they can communicate sometimes.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Half of me thinks, my God, how do we treat fellow human beings like that? And the other half of me thinks, why are we not treating Bryan Kohberger worse after what he did? But it is, sorry to say, sweet
when he gets
justice.
the TV and the tablet.
Yeah, but I don't want to watch TV in a cage. So it is kind of sweet justice to see that that's the only way he'll ever have any kind of joy in his life, in a cage within a massive prison cage. I also got to say, Brian, that those little tables where if you want to go out and sit in sort of that little general pop within your protective custody, you're going to be locked to a table. It made me think it looked like a kindergartner's table, but with a handcuffs. And again, I don't know if it's schadenfreude or joy or what it is. Again, the sweet justice comes to mind. Like anything that can remind us that his days are awful forever makes us feel better that he escaped, the ultimate punishment, which was what he did to the kids, a death penalty, Brian, amazing work. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. There were a few other things that we discussed on my NewsNation show tonight, and things that I've been learning. For instance, one of the folks who works with the Daily Mail has a new podcast out. Her name is Laura Collins. She's the investigative reporter and host of the Daily Mail's new podcast called On the Case: The Idaho Murders. She did this super interesting report that outlines a lot of what happened upon arrest when they came in with helicopters above and a SWAT team all clad in black, and snipers. I mean, there were snipers on the ready for the arrest of Bryan Kohberger back at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. And you might think, well, that's overkill, don't you think? He's a bit of a dweeb. No, they don't know who he is. They think there's Hannibal Lecter in there, because think of what they have to go on. Whoever they're about to arrest was capable of doing that at 1122 King Road. He is truly a Manson-like monster. And so, they came in blazing, right, to do the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. And they weren't sure necessarily who was going to be in that house or what Bryan Kohberger might have waiting for them. And so as is normal and protocol, do not blame the officers, they actually held his parents at gunpoint and zip-tied their hands. Again, Kohberger's in that house. So that is Kohberger's fault. That is not the police. That is Kohberger's fault. And I say, I hope he thinks every single day of his sentence what he's put his parents through from that night forward. So I had this great conversation with Laura Collins, not only about that arrest, but some of the things that he asked the police and mentioned to the police. We already know. He said, have you arrested anyone else? Whatever. We know it's you. But he asked them some other things, which were very curious and very insightful into his personality. I asked Laura Collins about that. And we also talked about what Bryan Kohberger did after the murders. The circuitous route that he took out of Moscow, Idaho into Pullman, Washington. Could have gone straight as an arrow, would have taken 10 minutes. Instead, took the long circuitous southern route. And did he get rid of the knife? Did he get rid of the bloody clothes and all the detritus of murder in that circuitous route? Did he bury it somewhere? Or Laura Collins followed his footsteps later that day. She drove the route that Bryan Kohberger is known to have done later that day, in which he got close to some water sources that would have been a good place to get rid of the evidence of murder. Because we all know that the K-bar knife and his bloody clothes have never been found. So great conversation with Laura Collins. Here we are on my NewsNation show. Laura, good to have you here. Let's just get right into it. The SWAT team, the helicopters, the snipers. I'm not surprised given what they knew this guy was capable of, right? The carnage in Idaho. I mean, none of those officers want to end up a target of his, so I get it. But I do want to ask you what else Bryan Kohberger asked those police officers. After the famous line, was there anybody else arrested? How else did he try to ingratiate himself?
Yes, well, quite remarkably, he suggested to one of the officers, I'm a criminology student, perhaps we can get a cup of coffee after this, showing no real understanding or perhaps complete denial, disassociation, or as you mentioned earlier, maybe just ego, that he thought he was getting away with this.
Boy, I'll say. Or, I'm just like you. We're not different. That kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, just, unbelievable ego. Let me ask you about the parents. I guess I was surprised to hear that these elderly parents were zip-tied. But then again, knowing what they were going into, a house where there was this maniacal killer, I guess I'm not surprised. Do you know much more about how they were treated?
Well, yes. I mean, like you said, the police were just taking no chances. And how could they? They know that they have this incredibly violent offender within those walls. They don't know if his parents are going to be supportive of him. They don't know what pushback they're going to encounter. So they treat everybody the same. They were all zip-tied. They were held at gunpoint. I mean, it must have been a pretty horrifying situation for the parents. But as you said, they just couldn't take any chances.
Well, and they don't even, at that point, they didn't even know how much worse it was going to get for them. I mean, I have no idea how much they knew. It's possible they knew absolutely nothing. It's possible they had an inkling. I mean, we just don't know what those parents knew, but we do know that they are not guilty of these crimes. They did not kill these kids, and what a horrible life they're living now. Question about the escape route. There's been much made about how Bryan Kohberger drove away from 1122 King Road that night. He committed the crimes from 4 until about 4:20 in the morning, and then he took a very circuitous route back to Pullman, Washington. He could have gone straight, but he did a big dipsy-doodle home. Do you think it's possible that he dropped the murder weapon and the bloody clothes and any other detritus of murder on that route somewhere along the way? Maybe he buried it somewhere?
I think it's quite possible, yes. I mean, as you said, he took this very circuitous route. In the affidavit, they suggested he was trying to avoid any chance of surveillance cameras or indeed maybe passing traffic. I mean, this is a very rural route, very rural road. He popped back up on his cell phone ping at 4:48. He didn't get home until 5:30. It's a 9-mile straight shot from his campus home to the Moscow house where he committed the murders. So there was no reason for it to take so long. There's also sort of 10 missing minutes along that route where he could well have stopped and disposed of evidence. I mean, as you say, there's lots that hasn't been found. He was also on the move later that day, actually. He left his campus home again, and he drove straight south down to the edge of the Clearwater and Snake Rivers. We actually drove that route, and where his cell phone pinged at 12:36 is within yards of the river's edge. So he may have disposed of some evidence on that escape route, and then perhaps he disposed of the knife in the river. I mean, it would make sense, and it's never been found.
Right, and that doesn't mean that it never will be. I know lots of people who do magnet fishing and lots of divers who look for murder weapons in certain areas, and maybe somebody will go there and maybe it'll be found. But wow, it's just so distressing. And hopefully tomorrow we might learn more, if not in the coming months. I had another conversation with a former warden named Leonard Verrey, who was the first person to tell me that it is possible that Bryan Kohberger will be jettisoned from the state of Idaho, may have to serve with another state's maximum facility. There is a deal between Arizona and Idaho, so he may end up in Arizona. Don't know. Maybe he'll end up in Idaho. Maybe they will decide they do have enough resources and savvy to handle someone of his caliber, because this guy checks a lot of boxes, right? He's horrible enough that people will want to kill him. He's horrible enough that they worry he's going to try to kill others, because what's he got to lose? And clearly he likes doing that. He's got some serious mental issues. We know that much. So are they going to have to deal with that? Do they have the protective custody that is secure enough for him? Do they have the staffing that's secure enough for him? Do they have the programs that he may need? So all of those things will happen. There'll be a scoring system, and a scoring system is really what they do to classify you before they put you away forever. They got to figure out how to put you away, exactly how to put you away within the actual institution. And so you get a classification score. I went over all of this with Leonard Verrey, and he was so insightful and knowledgeable because, yeah, he was a warden. He used to do this stuff. Here's our conversation on my NewsNation show, Banfield. Leonard, thank you. It's great that you're back on the show. I so appreciate it. The classification process I find really fascinating. With the little that we know about Bryan Kohberger, and then with the lot that we know about the crimes he's confessed to, can you give me a ballpark of what kind of classification he will get and how that will translate into how he'll be treated behind bars?
Sure. For a person with this level of violence, it is guaranteed he's going to be in a max custody setting. With the classification, what they're looking for is the severity of the violence, the potential for escape risks, because that's something that they have to consider. The potential for violence against staff, potential for becoming a victim himself, any gang-related issues. They also look at things such as treatment needs, where someone might come in with a drug issue, or they may have mental health issues. So those are the types of things that they would be looking at in a general classification viewpoint.
You know, Brian Enton was on at the top of the show, and he showed us inside the max security institution that is the only one in the state of Idaho. We don't know if he's going to stay there. He could be jettisoned out to another state. There's an agreement with Arizona. Maybe he's too much for them to handle. You and I talked about that. So if he goes to another state, I just wonder how much consistency there is between scoring him in Idaho and the treatment he'll get somewhere else. Meaning, if he scores in Idaho a certain number, could it get better for him in another state, or could it get worse for him in another state?
I definitely do not believe it'll get better. It could get worse. So because of his crime, because of the notoriety, the fact that he's going to be a nationally known and recognized figure for a few decades, I don't believe that anyway, no matter what state he goes to, he's going to be treated any better. Just based on the circumstances that we're looking at. He will be in a max custody facility with very sparse furnishings, very limited movement, very limited access to anything.
Yeah, I have to say the cages that are within the interior of the prison itself, it made me feel better that he is just going to be absolutely miserable, no matter what kind of movement he may get where he's locked up. But I do want to ask you, I see it on jail shows, I see it in Hollywood. Jail guards refer to, one of the inmates as inmate, but they never call them by name. Can you just sort of give me the real scoop on what his everyday will be like? How will he be referred to when guards want to refer to him, when he's doing check-in, when he's doing anything official, when other people in the prison are referring to him? Like, walk me through that.
So, I mean, from a real practical point of view, if you started using numbers, you would not get a lot of response back from people. Generally, the way that prison and jail facilities work is they're trained to use last names only. So you just be using the last name. You would never refer to him by his first name, except, filling out forms and whatnot. And that's a level of familiarity that you lose in that kind of a setting. So it would most likely be last name, but he would have to show his ID and he would have to verify his number anywhere he goes. So, if he's moving from his cell to the doctor, he'd have to identify himself, show his number, and that's generally how that works.
Okay. Like I said earlier, while you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, there will be, a full-fledged hearing going on tomorrow where it is likely that we will hear multiple victims' impact statements from family members of the, who've survived the horrors that their children went through. And we don't know if Bryan Kohberger will speak. Back to the families, we do know that Steve Gonzalez, his wife Christy, and Kaylee Gonzalez's sister Olivia are likely to make victims' impact statements in court. Don't know about the other Gonzalez family members. Not sure. As of last week, Steve told me it would just be the three of them. Ethan Chapin's parents don't even want to be there. And his surviving triplet brother and sister said they don't want to be there either. Don't know if they'll change their mind, but I doubt it because they have not been interested in being at any of these hearings. Stacey Chapin has said it to me personally. She said, nothing brings back Ethan. Nothing. Even the process. Death penalty, life in prison, nothing brings back Ethan, so nothing affects us. So, and I get it. I understand that everybody grieves differently and wants different kinds of justice, but they have indicated they will likely not be there. More than likely, they've said they won't be there. Maddie Mogan's family, I don't know. That's a wild card. They're really, really tight with the Gonzalez family, but, everything changes when you lose a child. And so who knows if they will show up. And then, this is a hard one too. Xana Kernodle's parents, her mom struggled mightily with drugs and incarceration. And from what I understand, she's really getting her life back in order. Will she be there? Will it be too much of a trigger for her in her challenges with life? Her father, not sure. They've been so quiet about it. But they have every right to be there and they have every right to have their say. And they have every right to address what their losses mean for all of us and for them as well. But again, Kohberger, what a wild card. I watched as Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, stood up and made his allocution in court and just spewed the most heinous details of his violent, sick killing spree, seemingly loving every moment of sharing it. I don't know if Bryan Kohberger would do that. I don't know what kind of guy this monster is. I don't know if he has so much ego he wants to share or if he has other ideas up his sleeve. I don't know. But we will find out tomorrow. And again, if you're watching this or listening to it today, I will have full coverage, not only on NewsNation, on my Banfield show at 10 p.m. Eastern, but also on this Drop Dead Serious podcast, because I am so appreciative of you and this community. I'm really riffing on it and getting it out quick tonight because that line kind of surprised me in front of the courthouse. I didn't expect it to be starting to build right away tonight. So instant podcast for you. And again, I'll have full coverage of the hearing tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.